Okay, we are live on YouTube. Um, there are there are a few folks that still need to be promoted. It may take us a few minutes to get formally started here because this is a big meeting with a lot of people. The folks from Beaverton need to be promoted. And if any of the rest of the people in the attendees area are here to do a presentation, just raise your hand because we don't necessarily know all the names. Oh, there's someone else from Beaverton. Okay. Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Bruce and Ika, you can keep an eye on the attendees area in case we have more participants who show up. We always start our meeting with the land acknowledgement, so I'll go ahead and do that now. We acknowledge the people on whose land we live, the Athaliti Kalapuyans, also known as the Tualatin Band of Kalapuyans, the first inhabitants of Washington County. We are grateful for the land we are on, Kalapuyan land. Signers of the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855 were removed from their homelands to the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation. Today, their descendants are tribal members of Grand Ronde and Siletz tribes, carrying on the traditions and cultures of their ancestors. We acknowledge and express gratitude for the ancestors of this place and recognize that we are here because of the sacrifices forced upon them. In remembering these communities, we honor their legacy, their lives, and their continuation in our community. I'd like to invite all of us to reflect on the role government has played in the painful colonial history and reflect as well on the resilience and healing of the indigenous land and communities. We invite everyone to collaborate and work together with the tribes to take care of the land and water and the people who inhabit these spaces. Okay, I'd like to quickly go over the agenda. We have a lot of people here tonight that haven't attended a CPO meeting recently or ever, and we certainly welcome you. We wish you'd been here with us all along and all this might not have happened. But anyway, we'll first have service provider updates, and we have several of our regional service providers who provide many of the services that allow us to function without being part of a city. And that includes Tualatin Hills Parks and Rec, the Water District, and the Sheriff's Office so far, I think. I don't believe we have anybody else. If somebody else pops in, we'll add them to the agenda. And then we'll talk about annexation, and we're going to have the presentations. I'm going to toss out a couple of questions of stuff that we want to be sure gets covered. But we'll let the presenters tell us what they brought to tell us. And then we'll have questions from the group. And we know over the last couple of days, there's been quite a bit of reaction on our Facebook groups about people who are opposed to annexation, and that's just fine. But we appreciate if you are going to make a comment that you don't just say you're opposed to annexation, and maybe talk about a question you might have or an issue that you would have with it, rather than just me too, me too, me too. just for the sake of having an interesting and informative meeting. We have some limitations in the form of the Zoom meeting that we have, which is we can't have any kind of chat or notes that we can post. So if there are links, you'll either have to copy stuff down as it happens or go back to the YouTube recording to get those links. Some folks, some of our presenters might want to send me an email and I'll post some of the links tomorrow on the CPO Facebook page. So that's it for now. Let's just take people in the order they arrived, which would be Lindsay Wachnick, and I finally remembered how to pronounce your name, from the Tualatin Valley Water District.
Thank you, Virginia. Hi, everybody. I'm Lindsay Wachnick. I'm with Tualatin Valley Water District, and we provide water to the CPO 1 area, as well as unincorporated areas of Washington County, including Beaverton, Hillsborough, and Tigard. Just a couple things to update you on. We have a couple active water main projects happening right now. One is on Southwest Skyhard Drive, just right off Olson Road, and another on Southwest Blanton Street near Southwest 209th Avenue in Hillsborough. Our next two water main projects are going to be in CPO 1's area. The first is going to be on Southwest Murray Boulevard between Butner Road and the West on Murray apartment complex. And that's expected to start in early March. The second is on Southwest Todd Street, Southwest Linda Lane, and then Southwest 137th, 138th, and 139th Avenue. And that one is expected to start in mid-March. So kind of keep your eye out for that. Information is on our project's webpage, and that is at www.tvwd.org/projects. And just one other thing to mention, this week we sent out our quarterly newsletter to customers. It includes new updates on our new water source and new water system, the Willamette Water Supply System, and information about our customer assistance program options. So look for that in your inbox. And if you didn't see it, go to our website and we have all the articles there as well. And that's it for me. I can take any questions if there are any. Hi, Bruce.
Hi. Excuse me. I am wondering if there's going to be an official celebration when the Willamette Willamette water system is completed. I think all the pipes are in the ground now,
Right.
and we are testing the systems. When the system actually comes online, will there be kind of a hoorah celebration acknowledging the incredible work that TVWD has done in getting us a reliable source of water for the next 50 years?
Yeah, I think, Bruce, our biggest thing that's on our mind right now and kind of keeping us up at night is our integration of the new system into our existing water system. And once we get past that point, we can really take a moment to breathe. We're very, very excited to get that online and get that served to our customers. And again, we'll be moving away from using the Portland water source that actually is kind of piped in and serves CPO 1 area. And instead, we'll be receiving water that is mixed between the Joint Water Commission, which is the Tualatin River water source, and then our new water supply system, which will pull from the Mid-Willamette River about 20 miles upstream of downtown Portland. So I think we'll get there, Bruce, but we're working on integration first, and then we'll be able to breathe and celebrate.
Good. Okay. Look forward to it.
Thank you, Bruce.
Okay. Next on our list. Oh, did you have more?
No, I just was going to say thanks, Virginia. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. And be sure to put March 10th on your calendar. We're working towards having a candidate forum. So as our last service to the community. Thank you. Okay, next we have, we got a bunch of folks from the sheriff's office, and sometimes they have to leave urgently, so let's bring the sheriff's office back. Hi, Megan. Hi, Sergeant DiPietro.
Hello. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with the dashboard from the year 2025. So please keep in mind that these numbers are from the entire year. And then we know there's been some hot button topics, so we wanted to open it up for questions rather than share anything specifics. First, I will share this.
Hello. Thank you, Megan. Can you guys all hear me?
You're good. You just need to speak up.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Looking at this, looks like we got the Q4 for 2025. Everything looks great. I'm not seeing any anomalies along any of these subjects. So I'm going to leave that as is and allow you guys to look at that. Due to the fact that there's a lot of people here, I wanted to open the floor to questions and just make sure that we get those answers.
First, I just want to thank Sergeant DiPietro for helping us with the article that we ran in the February issue of the paper. I didn't get any feedback from me. I wondered if you did.
I read it. It looked nice. I didn't get any feedback from anybody either.
Oh, okay. Well, if you haven't read it, it was a detailed rundown of how the Washington County Sheriff's Office interacts with federal law enforcement. So if that's a topic that interests you, you can go to cedarmillnews.com and it'll be in the current issue that comes up on that homepage. Anyway.
Are there any other questions?
Are there any questions for the sheriff's office?
I know you guys are talking about annexation. I can answer any questions related to annexation for law enforcement too.
Okay, well, hang around.
Okay.
If you can.
Yeah, I've got time right now. If I jump off, you won't see me.
Okay. Well, yeah, I haven't. Okay. There was something in the middle of the month, I believe, about trying to locate somebody with dogs and stuff in the middle of a neighborhood. I don't know if you knew anything about that. It's hard. I get posts on the Cedar Mill News Facebook group and people saying what's going on, but I never know exactly who to check with. And I don't think that but not in the middle of the night, Megan.
It's true. Please don't call me in the middle of the night, but you can email me and I'll follow up the next day.
Well, maybe I'll try to remember that so that at least in the morning I can give folks an answer.
And Virginia, if it's something big, you can always call the on-call PIO. If you don't have that number, just given the fact that you're part of Cedar Mills News.
I think I do.
Okay. If it's an emergency or it's something big, feel free to call that 24/7. That's why they have that job phone. That's what they get paid for.
Great. Megan, you had a question.
Yeah, well, I think if the sheriff's office is willing to address annexation from their standpoint, it would be nice to hear just from their standpoint, what does that mean in terms of coverage of sheriff, activity in the community? How does annexation affect their relationship with Cedar Mill? I'd like to hear that.
Yeah, we're going to hold all those annexation questions.
I know, but he actually offered to address it, so
it
would be nice if we could talk about that.
I think that we should answer that question right now in case Sergeant DiPietro has to hop off.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's no problem answering that question, Megan. I like that one. It's interesting. So we have what's called the Enhanced Sheriff Patrol District. And what that is, and that covers any of the Cedar Mill area that's, quote, unincorporated. What that does is give you city level services you would get from any other city that you live in. So in Oregon, the sheriff's office are responsible for two things. by statute, and that's the jail and search and rescue. As you can tell, we do a lot more than that, specifically with patrol and investigations and detectives. And that's why we did the ESPD levy somewhere in the 90s. And I know Bruce knows the answer to that question. I'll let him, if he doesn't mind soon. But what we did is essentially we went out and we started the ESPD, the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District. So the individuals who were not in a municipal city jurisdiction, they have the same services when it came to law enforcement. And I'll be honest with you, what it comes down to is finances. It comes down to taxes. I'm not going to get into the finances of it. That's something that people can do on their own research of what it would cost, depending on whether you're in one jurisdiction or another. But that's the biggest thing with us. The other thing is the sheriff's office already has a lot of resources that within the municipal cities, for example, forensics, search and rescue, a handful of the other teams. There already money that is allocated in taxes for those individuals. So sheriff's office services you're still being utilized. This one, if you're unincorporated, you're more than likely going to be part of our ESPD, unless you're way out in the West End, which no one here in this meeting, or at least in CPO 1 area are. When it comes to comparing law enforcement, we work together hand in hand with Beaverton. We like who they are. We work well with them. We train together. We have joint teams. They're part of our joint tactical negotiation team. They're part of our the Washington County Crisis Negotiation Unit. They're part of, I can keep going on and on with all these, part of our West Side Interagency Narcotic Team. There's multiple teams that we as a sheriff's office run, just given the fact whole county. And there's multiple officers from other jurisdictions that join our teams. So the biggest difference you would see from the law enforcement standpoint is you just have a different name on the car. Now, price-wise, I'm not going to get into that when it comes to taxes on how much the difference is. I just don't have those off the top of my head. And like I said, I'm not going to get to that. That's something for a finance person to do it. But that's kind of the biggest change you would likely see in the law enforcement side.
Thank you. Yeah, that's something we're hoping our presenters address is the difference in cost for the provision of services that would transfer to Beaverton if such a thing were to happen.
I'm just
Bruce?
a fan of Washington County. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to make a comment here that between the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District levy that we just renewed and the public safety levy that we just renewed, we have a sheriff's office that does more than is the legislated responsibilities. And so as a result of the unincorporated area and the sheriff's office getting to provide urban level policing, we have extraordinary services coming from the sheriff's office that we wouldn't have if we had a more normal configuration of cities handling the urban area and the sheriff handling the jail and the rural area. So I've observed that Washington County has an astoundingly both efficient and productive sheriff's office, in part because they had to respond to the unincorporated urban area and really up the game that they would have been playing otherwise. And the public safety levy also allows a whole level of public safety activities that wouldn't be possible with just straight county funding. So I'm not sort of blowing smoke at you. I'm saying that I am really impressed at the professionality and the range of services that the sheriff's office offers, in part because we have the unincorporated area.
Agreed. Okay, we're going to move along and hear from the Park District. If anybody thinks of questions you wanted to ask the sheriff's office that you forgot to, you can email me, cpo1leaders@gmail.com. Nicole, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Virginia. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. As a reminder, I am Nicole Paulson. I am the planning supervisor over at Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District, and I'm always happy to be here to be the liaison for the Park District. Just want to give a couple of updates. I know you've got a lot of big topics on the agenda today. We do have spring registration opening up Saturday, February 21st. And then along with that, our board of directors has referred a bond measure to go to the district, a bond measure to go to the district voters in May. And they voted unanimously to refer that bond measure to the district voters. There's a lot more information on our website. And I believe Virginia, if I'm not mistaken, will be here in March to give a greater presentation. We do also have a new website coming up. It's getting a fresh face, and the launch time is expected to go live in March, which is very exciting for us. Things happening around our area is at the Nature Center. We've got preschool registration open, our spring native plant sale, and we've also got Sunset Swim Center Shamrock Splash event. So those can all be found on our website. A couple development notes is that the Park District is working on the West Side Trail Bridge project. And we've received some grant funding for feasibility and design on that project.
And that's the one to go across Highway 26.
That's correct. Yeah. And we will be looking to put out a West Side Trail Bridge survey, or a West Side Trail survey rather, where we're developing a survey and new trail segments for this bridge. And we're hoping just to have community members share feedback. We invite you to bring any comments that you have or ideas, things to think about or consider. The survey will open February 20th, and the deadline to respond will be March 18th. I will be happy to share the link on that survey as soon as we get it. I will also put the project webpage in the chat feature if possible. I think I have access to the chat. And so those are some of our...
No, I wish we did, but we can't use chat.
If
you want to send me the links and stuff, I'll post it on the CPO1 Facebook page tomorrow.
I'd be happy to do that. And if you want to look for it before then, you can Google West Side Trail Bridge Project at THPRD, and it should pop up on the project webpage. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Well, since our topic is annexation tonight, the district has a lot of properties up in our area in between CPO 7 and CPO 1 that have languished for development, and we keep being told that it's because the homeowners around them aren't part of the district. And I keep asking if the district wants to make a push with our assistance to get those people into the district so we can have some parks, so we can develop some parks. I don't know if that's part of your area, but it's a big concern around here that we have several undeveloped properties and a real lack of parks.
Yeah, the Park District has been able to preserve quite a bit of land. And when we do have undeveloped sites, we do go through a prioritization criteria for undeveloped park sites. And that really allows us to identify areas that have a really low level of service. It also looks at considerations like economic justice, constraints for the site itself, whether that's slope or topography. Maybe it needs street improvements. We also look at how many in-district residents it would serve, and a variety of other items that help prioritize those projects. And so that is one consideration of many that we do look at regarding developing sites near and around folks that are in district. There is the voluntary annexation program that we do hold every other year that allows folks that are outside of that are not within THPRD boundaries, but they're in our ultimate service boundary. We allow those folks to jump in on an application that we provide the funding for. But that is a voluntary program. It is not a requirement.
Right. And as we know from the response tonight, a lot of people don't want to pay extra taxes. So we need to figure out some motivation. The property at the corner of Saltzman and Thompson is now ready because all the road work is done and there aren't any parks anywhere nearby. So it would sure be nice if that could be part of the bond. I know that there's I read the small print on the bond and it said there is a minimum amount of money for new development. So
yeah, that park, we did work with Washington County and we're able to get the street frontages and sidewalks in that project. That's a real benefit for the community for sure.
Okay. Any questions for Lindsay? Nicole? I'm sorry. Okay. Well, we also
Thanks, everybody.
have our County Commissioner, Pam Trees. I didn't know if you want to make a few general comments or if you were just here to listen to the presentation. Hi, Pam.
Hello, Virginia, and hello, everybody. I'm here primarily to listen to the presentations and to participate when called on. I don't have a presentation that I'm prepared to give, but thank you for asking.
Okay, great. Well, I think we will begin. I just wanted to do a little bit of clarification because there was such a lot of misunderstanding when I posted the meeting event notice. People wondered if Beaverton was initiating this. People wondered if the CPO was initiating this. It was, suspicion, finger pointing. All we were doing is trying to bring some facts together and information so that if that ever seems to be a good possibility, we know what it means. We're not saying we want to be annexed, and we don't really think that our bringing it up is going to increase the likelihood of annexation. And again, I'll reiterate that we're going to have presentations first, and then we'll take questions. And we hope that people are able to form their comments in a helpful and informative way and not just say, we don't want it. So I encourage you to help to contribute to the discussion and not just hold up your protest sign. Bruce.
Yeah, I sold Virginia on the idea of having sort of the future of CPO1 cover hosting this, in part because we get the most attendees to a CPO meeting when people are upset or concerned about something. And annexation is a surefire way of getting people to come and pay attention. So we aren't exactly chumming the system trying to get you to come, but since this is the second to the last meeting that CPO1 will ever have due to the dismantling of the system, I thought it would be germane to understand that we have a governance system that is really unusual, and the county is doing a service level study to see how much they spend supporting the unincorporated area. So there may well be future activity originating from the county dealing with the great urban area or unincorporated urban area, which is 1/3 of the 600,000 people in the county. So we'll see where this goes tonight.
And if anybody has any questions about the background of that, years ago, Bruce and I wrote a series called Urban Needs Rural Government. And some things have changed, but if you really want good background on how the county got this way, which is really pretty unusual to have so much urban area governed by a county government of 5 people. Urban needs rural government. And if you just put that in quotes and Google it, I think you'll end up with our information.
Yeah, the whole thing is that series has aged pretty well. I've thought about going in and updating it, but
we never got the round to it.
now. Okay.
Anyway, so let's see, I think that's all. Oh, and for those who weren't here when the meeting started, we don't have the chat function. If someone during the presentation is giving out links, either copy them down quick or the presenters can send me an email and I'll post them on the CPO Facebook page tomorrow. I'm sorry, that's about all we can do. So with that, let me introduce, we've got Andy Varner, Anna Slatinsky, and Lee Crabtree from Beaverton. And we've got, who from the county? Kenny Sloop. Do we have any other people from the county? Doesn't look like it. Okay. Well, folks, I'm just going to quickly run through a few questions that come from some of the folks who made comments and also someone who made a comment on CPO 7. And these are things that we'd love to have you cover. Probably you thought of all of this. What services does Beaverton provide that Washington County people pay for separately? Which agencies that we already have also provide services for Beaverton? What are some of the differences for permitting small improvements, cost and process? Would it be possible to have a NAC without annexation? And how do Beaverton taxes work? I was looking through some information on your property tax page, and it's complicated. So those are just a few things I hope you can cover. And with that, I'll get out of the way.
Okay, thanks, Virginia. Hi, everyone. Virtually, I'm Andy Varner. I'm the Community Development Department Director for the City of Beaverton. And as Virginia noted, Lee Crabtree, she's the Assistant Department Director, is online. And so is Anna Slatinsky. She's our Planning Manager with the City of Beaverton, and Kimmy Sloop with the county. One of our county partners is also online. I want to say a couple things as a preamble. You had a lot of good questions in there. Not sure if we'll be able to cover everything tonight because it's just not information we have at our fingertips. But I do want to say, first, happy to be here. Virginia reached out, letting us know this is something we wanted to discuss, and we said, sure. Because we're public servants, we want to provide accurate, transparent information for people. That's very important these days. The second thing, too, is we come in peace. This is not something that we proposed. We were approached to talk about this, so we're happy to do that. And just to be very clear, annexation, especially annexations of large areas or districts, is not something our city council, our mayor, our elected officials, our planning commission, it's not anything that they're talking about in a policy context whatsoever. So like I said, we're just here to sort of help describe what the process looks like. You may or may not know we do annexations into Beaverton on a regular basis, but they're smaller properties. A property owner may have a reason to do so. And then there's obviously properties annexing into South Cooper Mountain and Cooper Mountain in the future for development. So those are frequent. We do those for development purposes, and residents and property owners may have a reason to annex in for services or some other needs in the city of Beaverton. But doing something kind of larger scale is not something in our immediate future, and frankly, it would take a much larger conversation amongst our city council, because they would have a lot of the same questions that you're asking. You want to know sort of what's in it for us, and our city council would want to know what's in it for the city of Beaverton too, to bring in new properties. What would it cost current taxpayers and future taxpayers, and how would we fund projects and programs and infrastructure and all those things. So there's a lot of complicated details to work out. And I think Virginia and Bruce, you helped provide the context for that. So I appreciate that. We did not come with a presentation necessarily. We came with the invitation to have a conversation. So I think that's our approach. However, if we want to just kind of talk brass tacks generally about sort of what an annexation process may look like on it, our planning manager is very well equipped to do that. So Anna, if you want to do that kind of in general terms, and then if folks have more specifics, we're certainly willing to discuss the questions you folks have.
All right, so I'm happy to talk a little bit about the brass tacks of annexation. Virginia, you posed a lot of big picture questions. And, I think they're, as Andy said, kind of beyond the scope of what we came prepared to present about. If folks are interested in the kind of procedural side of annexation, I'm happy to answer some of those questions. Andy mentioned the two types of annexations that we do typically, and that would be either like an area for which we've done large scale community planning, such as in Cooper Mountain, where we're preparing to work with property owners to annex because of the potential to create housing. It was recently added to the urban growth boundary. That's all been a very kind of lengthy and deliberate process. And then there are these kind of miscellaneous annexations of smaller properties that would typically annex because they want to develop the property, but they need Beaverton services such as sewer or stormwater service, for example, or water. And Beaverton wants people to annex to the city in order to receive those services. So those are really the scenarios that we typically encounter in terms of annexation. And both of them are characterized by working with property owners that have a desire to annex to the city. All of the annexation methods are prescribed in state law. And so we are kind of guided by those procedures. And Beaverton also has a recently updated annexation ordinance that was adopted early in 2025, a little less than a year ago, actually, that was really done in preparation for annexation in Cooper Mountain following adoption of the community plan there.
I have a question about that. When new land is brought into the urban growth boundary, and in this case, Cooper Mountain, is the agreement between the city and the county that the land has to be annexed into Beaverton before it receives urban level development?
That's correct. So there's actually some obligations that come with property being added to the urban growth boundary at the request of a city. There are some requirements that Metro places on the city that proposes to expand the urban growth boundary. So, for example, Beaverton had an obligation to do in-depth planning for utilities and infrastructure and community plan to establish zoning. And that area in Cooper Mountain will not be able to develop at an urban level without annexing to the city to have all of those policies applied. So they're in rural zoning designations currently, and once they annex to the city, they will have the urban zoning designations that were laid out in the Cooper Mountain Community Plan applied at that time. Does that answer your question, Bruce?
Well, it pretty much does. I'm curious if there's any vote to agree to annex, or if it's automatic that it has to be annexed in order to develop.
No, it actually, we have to follow the same state law annexation procedures for an area which has been added to the urban growth boundary that we do for any other property.
So we wouldn't be expanding the urban unincorporated area by bringing in new land into the UGB. It would always go to the city or a city.
So there's a lot of complexity around policies around and laws and procedures around urban growth boundary expansions. But generally speaking, that is what you would expect. I would say in Cooper Mountain, there is some residential development there now that was developed even though it was outside the urban growth boundary. So again, at the actual situation on the ground isn't necessarily so cut and dried.
Mm.
But from a policy perspective, urban scale development isn't supposed to happen outside the urban growth boundary. And there are some specific policies at the state and metro and county level that basically uh, lay the groundwork for new urban scale development happening within cities rather than within unincorporated county areas. I think you know very well that, again, the way that Washington County has developed in an unincorporated way is kind of unique. And so those conditions are they're kind of unique and they're a little bit variable. So I'm hesitant to make really broad blanket statements about that because probably I'll be wrong in one neighborhood or another.
I have a kind of bigger picture question for you, Anna. And I'm kind of reluctant to get into this stuff now because we told everyone else to hold their questions, but I guess we're here to sort of guide the conversation. Is there any sort of mechanism to do a bulk annexation as opposed to one homeowner by one homeowner? Like say with some kind of state legislation or something like that. Because if, it would certainly not be advantageous for people to just annex in a patchwork fashion. It would be really hard to provide police services, for example, if it was a patchwork. But I don't know if the city has ever looked at this, but would there be some sort of different mechanism that would be undertaken if you were going to annex whole huge areas?
I have a kind of simplified slide that shows some of the annexation methods at a hopefully easy to like kind of absorb method. I think I'm going to go ahead and share that. It doesn't quite get to answering your question. And Andy, I don't know if you want to chime in for that, but let me go ahead and share my screen.
Thanks.
Okay, so let me get this as big as possible. Can folks see that okay?
That's great.
Okay, great. So now state law has a lot more words behind these different annexation categories that are on this slide, but it's so hard to parse them in a context like this. So this is very simplified, and it's not an exhaustive list. There are some other annexation methods that are things like if an area has a failing utility structure, there's kind of an emergency to annex. But these, I think, are probably the most relevant ones to be aware of. As I said before, really the scenarios that Beaverton encounters for annexation, I've been working at this city for almost 10 years now, have been limited to really these smaller properties that are interested in developing and need city services. And that's typically that expedited annexation that requires consent from all property owners and the majority of the voters that live in that area. It doesn't necessarily mean that each individual property annexes separately, but the annexation, the properties proposed to be annexed all have to kind of meet these requirements. Triple majority is another one that's very similar, right? You have to really you lean on the consent of the property owners in order for that annexation method to move forwards. Some other methods in Oregon law could potentially allow for annexation of a somewhat larger area, but these aren't methods that, frankly, I have any experience with. And really, as Andy said, any conversation that looks at annexation of a larger group of properties or neighborhood, that's really a pretty big conversation. And that's not one that is going to sneak up on anybody. And all of the questions on the community side, on the city side, on the county side would really need to be explored. But in terms of what's possible in state law, this is a pretty good summary, I think. And things that go beyond this, I think, just for example, if the entirety of CPO 1 were going to be annexed, that would be, I think, pretty impossible to do under the current procedures in state law. And certainly that would be something that would require some kind of change to state law. But that's not something that we're contemplating or pursuing at this point. And so really, I hope that kind of gets to your question, Virginia, but it doesn't necessarily, the existing annexation methods don't necessarily have to go just one little tiny property at a time, but they're not really intended to address large areas.
No, that's really informative. Thank you. I think in the back of my head, I knew there were some state methods. But, again, and I appreciate you reiterating that this would be huge and would not be sneaking up. The roadway thing, I think at one point, an island annexation could happen because of roads, but I think the state changed that law. But
there was
I'm misremembering.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what years it were, but the 75% surrounded by the city, that's something that was tweaked recently, and I think it was to recognize that sometimes cities are multiple cities form the kind of the area around an area that's unincorporated, and so it allows the boundaries of multiple cities to kind of count towards the valid area of 75%.
Yeah, we had a little flurry of road annexations back under Mayor Drake, and I believe at that point it would have been possible to do some of those the Cherry Jam annexations and then leading to an island annexation, but I think they did. The state passed a law against that.
Yeah, I don't have all of those details straight in my head. There's been certainly a lot of history there in terms of Beaverton and the state and Washington County. And what I can tell you is that what you see on the screen now is, I think, a accurate representation of the most common annexation methods under state law. But there's probably more water under the bridge there.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing to facilitate discussion.
I think one of the biggest questions that people have is about the provision of services and, of course, about taxation. And I believe I heard from most of you that you don't have that information at your fingertips. At least maybe you could talk about what the services that are provided by the various service agencies and what the city would take over and what would remain. For example, parks. Beaverton has a tiny parks department, right? But you're served by THPRD. Yeah?
Sorry. So THPRD is the parks provider for most of your area, and they would continue to be the parks provider. TVFNR is the fire provider, and they would continue to be the fire provider. The water, I'm not going to get into because that has more complexity than I wouldn't want to misrepresent that relationship with TVWD and the city's IGA, but there is a transition plan for a portion of the area to Beaverton Water. And then Sheriff's Department, with annexation, properties do usually come off the enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District and into City of Beaverton Police Service area, but we still have cooperative agreements for response. So doesn't matter where you are, an officer or a sheriff could show up, and then eventually they would turn over the record to the jurisdiction that has, If it's in unincorporated county, it would turn over to the sheriff. If it's in the city, it would turn over to the BPD.
Does Beaverton provide sewer services, or is that all through Clean Water Services?
It's kind of an it depends situation. It depends on the size of the facility that's being maintained. But you know, the city does take over storm for the most part. But again, it's kind of an it depends situation.
Yeah, and I expect anything this big, there'd be a ton of details to be worked on.
Yeah. And Kimmy, I don't really want to put you on the spot, but I'm trying to think of like, what else am I forgetting?
Well, the school district, that obviously applies to everybody.
Yeah, we don't change, school districts don't change, zip codes don't change.
Solid waste collection would go from the county to the city.
Yeah, those would be different franchise agreements.
Franchise agreements. So yeah, the providers may not change, but the franchise agreements, and planning.
Yeah.
Development
services. Planning.
Development services, yeah. So going for getting your permits, would switch from one jurisdiction to the other.
Right.
I found it kind of interesting that some of the larger developments right along Highway 26 have opted to annex into Beaverton to use your planning services rather than relying on Washington County's planning services. I think that's a pretty good vote of confidence in the services that you offer. More expeditious and perhaps a little better process. Can you say something about the advantages of using the Beaverton Planning Department for a development?
Well,
I mean, go ahead.
We definitely do our best to provide good customer service to our development customers. And sometimes there are also differences in terms of the regulations that are in place. The zoning can be somewhat different, although we are all governed by the Metro Functional Plan, the town centers and regional centers and corridors. Those are actually all addressed to a certain extent at the regional level, and that includes unincorporated Washington County in the area that we're discussing. So, you know, obviously, I think most of you are aware that lots of jurisdictions are struggling with funding services, and that's true at the county, it's true at the city, it's true at anyone you're going to talk to. But one of the services that we do provide is those development services. So all of that permitting and building inspection activity is done through the city of Beaverton within the city boundaries.
Thank you.
Kimmy, did you want to make any comments about the planning being turned over to Beaverton, or whether that would, anything you have to say about that?
The only thing, like thinking about the list that Lee mentioned, the only other one I would add is the Urban Roads Maintenance District. That is currently a county function for operation and maintenance of some of the local and neighborhood streets, and that would then, when areas are annexed, that they come out of the Urban Roads Maintenance District, and that becomes a responsibility of the city. So that is another service change.
Right. And what we were told back in the day was that providing Beaverton level services to the residential areas would be expensive compared that back when all those little strip annexations were being done, that it was focusing on business areas because they were more profitable to the city and less of a drain. Now, you know, I don't know if that's still true, or if any of you could speak to that, but that's been our assumption, that the city would not be eager to take over our residential areas because there would be gaps in what the city standards and the way things are out here. I mean, it's not like we're in terrible shape, but we wouldn't exactly match city standards in all cases. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Another way that it's been put is that residential development even though we pay substantial property taxes, does not cover the cost of providing urban services to residential properties. And so you require commercial or industrial property to pay those property taxes to be able to provide urban services to residential areas. So the mix of residential and commercial industrial is critical to good funding. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll take this with just a brief answer. Bruce, I think any city or county for that matter would like to have a nice mix of residential and non-residential balance for a tax base. And non-residential, I don't mean, institutional schools and things like that, tax producing, non-residential like commercial or industrial properties. I'm sure at your CPO meetings, you've talked a lot about the property tax system in Oregon and how having an industrial tax base is very beneficial when you have measures 5 and 50 and how those kind of enter the tax rolls for assessed value. So to answer your question in brief, yes, that is certainly a benefit. And frankly, one part of the equation would be just looking at the overall assessed value probably of a neighborhood or a district, just to kind of see how they would contribute to a tax roll, and then all the infrastructure that you would be inheriting to pay for that. Because it's in an ideal world, you have a good assessed value tax base to go along with the infrastructure you'd be taking on as well. So I hope that helps.
I'm not sure that we need to, unless, let me just ask each of you if you have anything else that you want to add, and then maybe we can start taking questions from the group. And I understand that you may not have answers on the tip of your tongue, and it's occurring to me that I should probably follow up with an article in the March issue of Cedar Mill News. So we could do that. If we have good unanswered questions, we can follow up. Does that sound good? Anybody have last comments? No? Okay. We will now take questions from the audience, and you can raise your hand. Huh, I thought we'd be swamped.
Well, I think we covered the bases pretty good, and we aren't threatening to annex anybody. So,
right, Mary.
So am I unmuted?
Yes.
You are
Good,
with us.
good. So I have a question about North Bethany. There is a section of land that is outside the urban growth boundary, is urban reserve, and it can't be developed until the area is annexed to a city. It is undesignated at this point as to whether it's city of Hillsborough or the city of Beaverton. Is there any possibility of that land being developed if North Bethany were annexed to city of Beaverton?
So it's outside the UGB?
It is outside the UGB. It cannot come inside the UGB until a city agrees to take responsibility for planning. And at this point, it's disconnected from either Beaverton or Hillsborough. And the problem is it's a piece that's needed to complete the transportation infrastructure in North Bethany. So that
Mary,
piece
you're referring to Shackelford Road extension?
Exactly. So it would be a road within North Bethany that needs to connect out to 185th.
I have a little bit of familiarity with this, but it hasn't been an active focus. But I am aware that the community has an interest in seeing that road completed. I think the last time we had this conversation was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And we were kind of eyeball deep in our planning for Cooper Mountain. And I think what is probably coming through in the conversation so far, but I'll just kind of reiterate, which is that there are a lot of responsibilities that cities take on when areas are newly urbanized. There's a lot of infrastructure planning and investment, a lot of just frankly staff time and coordinating all of that. And when it comes to that service provision, areas that are geographically far from the current city boundaries are more difficult for us to provide service to. So there isn't, I don't think, a near term likelihood that Beaverton is going to be in a position to request that that area be added to the urban growth boundary, do the planning, et cetera, that would allow it to be developed. And again, it's kind of in that long-term time frame.
Thank you. I feel like
I'm sorry. Do you have requirements that an area to be annexed be contiguous to the city?
Yes. Often we can meet that requirement by negotiating with Washington County to take roadway, which will then connect the Beaverton city boundaries to the area to be annexed. And so that's why we have to coordinate with the county for that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. Sorry, Mary.
I was just going to say, I want to continue to push this question because it's one that we hear from the community about the need for that roadway to be completed.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? I mean, I thought by the heat of the discussion on Facebook that everyone would be beating down our Zoom door, but maybe we answered them all or allayed your fears. Let's hope, because our purpose in this was just to learn. Bruce, did you have any other questions? One question I had, and it may be far-fetched, but part of our motivation in this was trying to figure out how our community members were going to continue to have some say in local government, given that the community-led CPO system would be going away, and we admire the Beaverton NAC system, even though I know that sometimes you guys have the same participation issues that we do, but at least it's a good system that allows people to be involved. Is there any way that you could extend the NAC system to the ultimate service area rather than waiting for something like annexation? I mean, I don't have any. I get ideas, but I don't necessarily know how to implement them. So I think, Lee, maybe you'd be the person to ask that.
And so kind of to illustrate that point, Beaverton promotes the Community Emergency Response Team, the CERT program, to anybody inside the Beaverton School District boundary, not inside the city. And also the mediation services are provided to Hillsborough and Beaverton have divided it. And so the city of Beaverton does provide some services for people outside the city limits. And of course, the Beaverton City Library doesn't check where you live in order to check out books, our magnificent library system. So Virginia and I are looking for a possibility of having a localized, geographically contained representation that's going away now with the CPO becoming commissioner district focused, which, the commissioner districts are so big, they don't really have a geographic coherence to them. And your NAC system does. And I attend some NAC meetings and also the Beaverton CCI meetings, and I'm really impressed at what the city offers. And so and you don't necessarily need to respond, but the idea is that you might take the central Beaverton NAC and just extend it into Cedar Mill and advertise, just call into the meeting and see what's going on. So that's the idea that we had.
Yeah, let's let Lee respond.
Well, a lot of this is stuff that we can't answer because it would
Right.
require our elected leaders to chime in. But what we hear more often is that if we're going to provide city services, we want to make sure it's going to, people who are within our jurisdictional boundaries. Like there is kind of like because our boundaries are odd, right? So we don't check where people live for the most part with the things that we provide. But it is important that being fiscally constrained, we have to be mindful of, who's paying for the service and who's getting the service on especially on certain things. So it would take an evaluation at a larger scale, but if an area wasn't within city boundaries, I'm not sure that we would extend the NAC. I mean, as an example, a CERT is something that is also kind of a volunteer-based thing. So it has, when we do coordinated emergency response with the county or coordinated library services with WCCLS or coordinated mediation services with Hillsborough and the county, like those are different coordination agreements that we have that we're just, there was a mechanism for deciding that we would do that intergovernmentally. So I don't know if that helps you, helps answer that or not, but
well, it does. I mean, if we were serious about it, we'd have to put a well-considered proposal on the table and
with some funding
and work out the intergovernmental agreement on it.
Mary Lou, you may talk. Unmute yourself.
Me?
Mary Lou, you can talk, but you need to unmute yourself on your screen.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
No, no, there's a person named Mary Lou Hall.
Oh. I wondered because I thought, who else is named Mary Lou around here?
Well, Mary Lou Hall, but I don't know. Maybe she went away.
Maybe so.
Okay. Well, Mary Lou Hall, if you get the message, you can talk, but I think we're just about done here. Since I don't see any more raised hands. Okay. Well,
did Mary Lou has her hand up? Did she not unmute?
She didn't unmute.
Okay.
And we've just been talking to her and trying to get her attention, but maybe she had to go. I think that's it. I will get back to you guys who have participated and maybe follow up on some of this. And I don't know. I doubt if you need to share contact information because there's really nothing to contact you about at this point. So I assume that the lack of questions means that we've been able to simmer down the outrage and bring facts to people, which is our point. I want to be sure that we invite everyone to the March meeting when we're going to do a candidate forum. Commissioner Treese.
Thank you, Virginia. I just want to say thank you to the representatives of the city of Beaverton and Washington County for doing a really good job of outlining what the parameters are around annexation. And I think what you saw tonight is that working relationship that is so important between the county and each one of our cities. So thank you to everybody here, and nice job. It's not always an easy conversation, but it's an important one that we all look to. And I thank both you and Bruce for your questions. Bruce, especially around I enjoyed the question around the tax base and the mix of different types of property tax that's important. So So thank you.
Right, and that's something we can look into a little bit more and bring a little bit more information when I do an article.
Yeah, when Virginia's talking about an article or the newspaper, she's talking about her very own Cedar Mill News. So any of the attendees, if you want to stay abreast of what's going on in Cedar Mill or Cedar Hills
the
or
Facebook
Bethany,
group is nice, but the news is where the meat is.
and you can sign up for a free monthly edition of news. And before you guys go, I want to thank Andy, Anna, Lee, and Kimmy for taking your time and coming here to avail yourselves to questions and a potentially unruly audience, although I can't say that we delivered on being unruly, really.
No need to apologize, Bruce.
No, we're very nice people.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. And before the audience all leaves, and I hope you do stick around for a couple more pieces of the meeting. And man, I've got to say, I wish some of you folks would have been coming to all of our meetings because they were at least as interesting as this one. And like I said, next month, we're going to be talking about candidates, and there'll be candidates for the District 2 Commission position, the chair position, a couple of state legislature positions, and at least one ballot measure. The deadlines have not passed for these elections, but hopefully the deadline for the commission positions is the 10th, which is the date of the meeting. So hopefully we won't have to scramble to add a bunch of people, but we'll be sending out invitations soon, Pam. We're still waiting for the final okay from the OAO because they've had issues with us doing a candidate forum in the past, but hopefully that all gets straightened out and then we'll send out invitations.
Virginia, just recently, I was elected to the board of the Washington County Public Affairs Forum, and
I know, but we'll do it with us if we can't. I mean, we'll do it with them if we can't do it with us. Before we lose everybody, I want to talk about a development that some of our neighbors might like to know a little more about. I didn't have an awful lot of information when I published the February issue of the paper, but I do now, and it is the development. I'm going to share my screen here for a moment, if I can technically get it sorted out. Oh, Jesus. Okay, there we go. And it is on McDaniel. There it is. This is the way stuff comes to us now. We don't get paper copies of development applications anymore, but they send us a link. And I'd be glad to share this link with anybody who's interested. This is the preliminary site plan, which changed. What happened? I double clicked instead of single clicking. Okay, this is McDaniel. The Bonnie Slope School is over here. And in the initial proposal, the only entrance to this development, and it's middle housing, so it's little tiny townhouses all mushed together. The entrance was going to be from down here only. So it would have gone through this other neighborhood here and then come along here. I believe right there was where we had that big fire. But now it appears that there's going to be an entrance from Cornell, and which is kind of, I mean, it's going to be right in this direction, and then undetermined, I guess, left out both directions, left and right out, which might be problematic. Unfortunately, we didn't get this information until the comment period had passed, but it should be available on the county website. So if anybody lives near here and wants more information about this, please send me an email to CPO1 leaders, CPO1leaders@gmail.com. And this document, I'll send you the link. You can look at all the pictures. You can read the development application. But like I said, unfortunately, I didn't get this stuff until after we'd gone to press in February. So we'll stop that. And next on our agenda is It's Your CPO, which is the chance for anyone to make an announcement, to talk about what you're doing, to ask for support, questions, concerns, pretty much anything. February tends to be a fairly dead month, but if somebody has a fundraiser or an event or something coming up, please share. No, okay. And then I thought, I don't know if anyone has any thoughts about this, but I guess there's been quite a bit of a lack of attention and understanding to what's really going on with the CPO system. And I've tried to write about it and to answer some questions during the Facebook group discussions. But basically, there are going to be 4 CPOs, or what's going to take the place of the CPOs. Each one will be a commissioner district. Those districts were slightly redrawn a few years ago by population, I think. And I mean, they were meant to represent equal amounts of population. So the rural areas are much larger. The topics are going to be presented by the county, not the topics that the community leaders bring up, although everything's up in the air. We don't know exactly how it's going to work. They don't know exactly how it's going to work. They're talking about doing it in conjunction with community leaders, but we don't know who those people are going to be. They're going to be appointed, I guess, by the board. And the topics for each of the CPOs are proposed to be county-wide topics. So the kind of neighborhood granularity that we dealt with, you know, what are we going to do with this road? What kind of development is going in here? Why are they cutting down all those trees? That's no longer going to have a platform. And the leaders of various CPOs have been wrestling with this for years. We didn't necessarily anticipate that things were going to change as much as they're going to change, but we knew that something was going to change. And as Bruce said today, we've been told that it's a budget issue, but it's really because we're feisty and independent, and they can't control us, and they don't like that. At least Bruce and I agree on that. Some other people may disagree, but we think it's important for neighbors to get together and have a chance to complain and learn and get together and maybe change things. And we've bounced around a bunch of different ideas about how we can do that. And one of the ideas was to form a new nonprofit, but none of us have the energy to do that. So if this plinks the heartstrings of any of you folks that are here tonight, let me know. We'd love to discuss something like that further. Anybody have any comments about any of that? Just as an aside, a friend of mine is working with some friends of hers to develop almost kind of an assisted living facility, a co-housing facility for adult children with neurodiverse and disability issues. And it's going to be right in downtown Cedar Mill, and they're looking for a few more partners. They bought the property. They've got a model for developing it. And there's an article in the current issue of the Cedar Mill News. I had hoped that she'd be attending the meeting tonight to say a few words, but she's not here. But there's an article in the Cedar Mill News about that in case anybody has or knows a family that could use those kinds of services. You know, adult children with special needs can really be an issue for families, and a supported housing environment where they can be independent, but you know, not be in the family home anymore. Anyway, oh yeah, go ahead. That Mary Lynn.
Yeah, thanks. I just got to thinking, you know, have you heard of Edward Center in Aloha?
Yeah, but this is something different.
But is it similar? Do you think?
I don't think so. Edwards Center, well, maybe a little bit. They do have some apartments there. But go ahead and take a look at the article.
Okay.
Thanks. Well, unless someone jumps up and wants to say something, I think we could adjourn early. The subtitles are amusing sometimes. Yeah. Okay, let's do it. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Oh, Lee? Oh, no, she just popped on.
Thanks, Virginia. Thanks for giving it your all.
Well, you know, right down to the wire. We're going to do what we do until we can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And then maybe we'll even figure out some new way to do it. Because, you know, bringing people together in community, to me, that's my contribution to the mess that the country is in.
I hear you.
We're going to keep trying.
But I just thank you and Bruce for, you know, all the work that you've done all these years.
And by the way, to everybody that's attending now, we are going to keep the CPO1 Facebook page alive.
Good.
We may rename it, but also, you know, we've got the Cedar Mill News Group, which is going private tomorrow. Yeah, we've just had a flood of people responding, you know, from all over the place, and it's just becoming practically a full-time job for me to moderate and allow people in or not allow them in, and so by taking it private, that should diminish it. I understand that groups all over the country are having these issues. Facebook just does what's good for its bottom line. They're not looking to design it to make it wonderful to use for everybody. They're looking to design it to get the most revenue, and having, you know, 1,000 unrelated people join the group is good for them, but not good for us. So anyway, if you haven't already joined the Cedar Mill News Facebook group,
it's interesting. I love that group.
Well, but it can get pretty contentious.
Well, yeah,
not friendly.
A couple people took me on at one point, and
yeah. Right. Okay, with that, we're adjourned. Please come back next month, and we'll see y'all later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.